The altimeter, the tool that tells me how high I am above the ground, was spinning in circles, and for a split second, I didn't know which way was up. The sky was a flat, dull gray, and the ground was hidden by thick clouds that looked like dirty wool. My hands were shaking on the control wheel of my small Cessna plane. I had flown thousands of hours in giant jets across the ocean, but right now, in this tiny cockpit, I felt like a child lost in a dark forest. Then, a voice came over my headset. "Mom, you're dipping too low. Pull up, you're losing it." It was my son, Leo, sitting in the seat next to me. His voice was full of panic, but when I looked at him, his face was calm. Too calm. He wasn't looking at the clouds. He was looking at my hands, waiting for them to fail. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't an accident. My son wasn't trying to save me, he was trying to make me crash. My name is Sarah Miller. I am 75 years old. For most of my life, I was a captain for a major airline. I have flown through lightning storms over the Atlantic and landed planes with broken engines in the middle of the night. In the sky, there is no room for, maybe, or, I think. You follow the checklist. You trust your instruments. You stay calm, or people die. When I retired, I thought I was leaving the stress behind. I bought a small house near a quiet airfield and kept a little 4-seater plane just for fun. I wanted to spend my golden years in the clouds, where everything made sense. But life on the ground is much messier than life at 30,000 feet. 2 years ago, my husband, Jim, passed away. Jim was a mechanic, the kind of man who could fix a watch with a butter knife. He kept our house and my plane in perfect shape. When he died, the silence in the house was louder than a jet engine. That's when Leo moved back. Leo is my only son. He's 45, and he's always been what Jim called a fast talker. He's had 10 different jobs in 10 years. He always has a big idea that just needs a little bit of cash to get started. When he moved in, he told me he wanted to take care of me. He told me I shouldn't be alone in my grief. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be a mother more than I wanted to be a pilot. But slowly, the incidents started happening. It began with the small things. The kind of things you tell yourself are just part of getting old. I would put my car keys on the hook by the door, and an hour later, they would be in the trash can. I'd go to the kitchen to make tea, and the stove would already be on, the blue flame licking the air, but I didn't remember turning it on. Leo was always there to catch me. "Mom, you left the burner on again," he'd say, shaking his head with a sad smile. "You're getting so forgetful. Maybe it's time we talk about selling the plane. It's not safe for someone who can't remember the stove." I started to feel a cold knot of fear in my stomach. Was I losing my mind? I had always been so sharp. I could remember every tail number of every plane I'd ever flown. Now, I couldn't find my glasses. Leo started bringing friends over. One was a man named Mr. Henderson, who said he was a wealth manager. They would sit in the living room and talk in low voices about protecting my assets and liquidating the estate. They spoke as if I weren't even in the room. They talked about me like I was a broken engine that was too expensive to fix. "She's slipping, Bill," I heard Leo whisper in the hallway one night. "She almost hit a fence with the car yesterday. It's only a matter of time before she does something really dangerous. I need that power of attorney signed before she burns the house down." I sat in my bedroom, my heart thumping against my ribs. I hadn't almost hit a fence. I had been driving perfectly fine. Leo was lying. But why? Then I remembered the flight we took last week. Leo had asked me to take him up so he could take some photos of the coast. That was when the altimeter started spinning. That was when he started screaming that I was falling. When we landed, I went straight to the hangar after Leo left. I opened the panel to the plane's instruments. I'm not a mechanic like Jim was, but I've spent 40 years looking at these wires. I saw it immediately. A small, powerful magnet had been taped behind the instrument panel, right next to the altimeter. It was enough to make the needle go crazy, but easy to pull off and hide. Leo had sabotaged my plane. He had tried to scare me into thinking I was losing my ability to fly. I stood in the dark hangar, the smell of oil and old metal around me, and I felt a strange shift in my mind. The part of me wanted to cry. I wanted to run inside and ask my son how he could do this to me. But the captain part of me took over. A pilot doesn't cry when the engine fails. A pilot looks for a place to land. I realized that my house was now a cockpit in an emergency. Leo was the storm, and I was the pilot. I needed a plan. I needed to know exactly what he was doing and how he was doing it. I started my own pre-flight check of my life. I bought small, hidden cameras, the kind that look like USB chargers, and put them in the kitchen and the living room. I started keeping a secret logbook in a locked box under my bed. Every time Leo said I forgot something, I wrote down the truth. Monday, 10:15 a.m. Leo says I left the back door open. I know I locked it. I saw him unlock it on the camera 5 minutes later. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Leo says I forgot to pay the power bill. I checked my bank records. The bill was paid, but he had hidden the confirmation letter in his own desk. He was trying to build a case. He was trying to make the world think I had dementia so he could take my money, sell my house, and sell my beautiful plane. He needed the money to pay off the debts I knew he had been hiding. But I wasn't going to let him. I was going to fly this plane all the way to the ground if I had to, but I wasn't going to let him win. I started playing the part. I acted more confused. I let my hair be messy. I forgot where the milk was. I wanted him to get confident. I wanted him to think the crash was coming soon. One night, I sat at the table while Leo and Mr. Henderson showed me some papers. "It's just to help you, Sarah," Mr. Henderson said. He had a face like a shark. "This gives Leo the right to handle the big stuff so you don't have to worry. You can just relax and look at your garden." "Oh," I said, my voice thin and shaky. "That sounds nice. I do get so tired lately. The birds, they talk so loud, don't they?" Leo looked at Mr. Henderson and winked. It was a small, quick movement, but I saw it. It was the tell. He thought he had me. "I'll think about it," I said, pushing the papers back. "Maybe after my big flight on Saturday. I want to go up one last time before the weather gets cold." Leo's eyes sharpened. "A flight? Mom, do you think that's a good idea? After what happened last time?" "I'll be fine, Leo," I said, smiling at him. "You'll be there with me. You're such a good son. You'll keep me safe." I saw the greed in his eyes. He thought Saturday would be the day. He thought he would scare me one last time, maybe even cause a small, non-fatal accident, and I would sign anything he put in front of me. He didn't know that I had spent the last 3 nights in the hangar. I had removed the magnet. I had checked every wire, every bolt, and every drop of fuel. I had also installed a very special piece of equipment in the cockpit, a high-definition camera with a direct link to the local police station and my lawyer's office. I was setting a trap in the sky. Friday night was the hardest. Leo made me dinner, pasta with a heavy red sauce. I watched him through the reflection in the window as he stirred a small white powder into my glass of wine. He thought I was looking at the moon. "Here you go, Mom," he said, handing me the glass. "To a great flight tomorrow." I took the glass and walked toward the living room. "Oh, I forgot my napkins," I said. While his back was turned to get the napkins, I poured the wine into the dirt of a large potted plant in the corner. Then I wiped my mouth and pretended to be sleepy. "I think I'll go to bed now, Leo," I yawned. "I feel so heavy." "That's good, Mom. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow." I went to my room and locked the door. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the sounds of the house. I heard Leo talking on the phone in the kitchen. "Yeah, it's happening tomorrow," he whispered. "By Sunday, the house will be on the market. The old lady is barely holding on. I've got the pills, I've got the papers, and I've got the incident planned. Just be ready to file the emergency guardianship on Monday morning." I felt a coldness settle over me. This wasn't just about money anymore. He was willing to drug me and put me in a plane. He was willing to risk my life for a house. I looked at the picture of Jim on my nightstand. "Don't worry, Jim," I thought. "The captain is on the flight deck." Saturday morning was beautiful. The sun was a bright gold coin in the sky, and there wasn't a cloud to be seen. It was a perfect day for flying. Leo was extra nice. He helped me into the car. He carried my flight bag. He kept asking me if I felt dizzy or confused. A little bit, honey, I said, leaning on his arm. But I think the fresh air will help. When we got to the airfield, the little Cessna was waiting. She looked beautiful in the morning light. I did my walk-around check, touching the wings and the propeller. Leo stood back, looking at his watch. He was nervous. He wanted to get this over with. We climbed into the cockpit. I buckled my seatbelt and put on my headset. Leo sat next to me, his hands gripping his knees. "Ready, Mom?" he asked. "Ready as I'll ever be," I said. I started the engine. The roar was a comfort to me. It was a sound I understood. I checked my gauges. Everything was in the green. No magnets today. We taxied out to the runway. I looked at the long stretch of gray pavement ahead of us. This was my world. On the ground, I was an old woman who forgot her keys. In the air, I was the master of gravity. "Clear for takeoff," I whispered. I pushed the throttle forward. The plane sped up, the vibration of the wheels smooth and fast. Then, the nose lifted, and we were airborne. The ground fell away, and for a moment, I forgot about Leo. I forgot about the pills and the lies. I was just Sarah Miller, and I was flying. But then, we reached 2,000 feet. Leo reached into his pocket. I saw him pull out the magnet. He thought I wasn't looking. He started to lean over toward the instrument panel. "Mom," he said, his voice starting to get that fake panic in it. "Do you hear that? The engine, it sounds funny." "It sounds fine to me, Leo," I said, my voice calm and cold. "No, look at the dials. We're losing power." "Mom, look." He moved the magnet close to the panel. The needles started to jump and spin. "Oh no," I shouted, acting scared. "What's happening?" "Leo, I can't see how high we are. I don't know what to do." "I told you," Leo yelled. "You're too old for this. Give me the controls. I'll try to land us, but you have to promise me, Mom. You have to promise you'll sign those papers as soon as we land. You're dangerous." I looked at him. He was leaning over me, his face ugly with greed. He thought he had won. He thought I was terrified. I reached up and grabbed his wrist. I have strong hands for an old woman. I've spent 40 years pulling back on heavy controls. I twisted his arm away from the panel, and the magnet fell to the floor of the cockpit. Immediately, the needles snapped back to their correct positions. The plane was perfectly fine. Leo stared at the floor, then at me. What did you do?" "I didn't do anything, Leo," I said. I reached over and flipped a switch on the dashboard. A small green light came on. "But I think you should say hello to the camera. And to the sheriff. He's listening to every word you say." Leo's face went from red to white. He looked at the camera, then at me. "Mom, it's not what it looks like. I was worried. You were trying to kill me, Leo," I said. I turned the plane in a smooth, sharp arc back toward the airfield. "Or at least, you were trying to kill my spirit. But you forgot one thing." "What?" he whispered. "I'm the captain," I said. "And you're just a passenger. And passengers don't get to touch the controls." The flight back was silent. Leo sat there like a ghost, staring at his feet. I landed the plane so softly he didn't even feel the wheels touch the ground. It was the best landing of my life. As we taxied toward the hangar, I saw the police cars waiting. Their lights were flashing red and blue against the white walls of the buildings. "This is part 1 of your journey, Leo," I said, shutting down the engine. "The part where you realize that the flight is over." I took off my headset and looked at my son. I felt a deep sadness, but also a great peace. The storm was over. I had landed the plane. The police officers moved in quickly as soon as the propeller stopped spinning. The sound of the engine dying away left a ringing in my ears, but the silence that followed was even heavier. Leo didn't move. He sat in the co-pilot seat, staring through the windshield at the flashing lights. He looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him wasn't solid anymore. I didn't say a word. I just unbuckled my seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped down onto the tarmac. My legs felt a little like jelly, but I stood tall. I was a captain, and I had just finished the most difficult flight of my life. The sheriff, a man named Miller who had known my husband Jim for years, walked up to the plane. He looked at me, then at Leo, who was being led out of the cockpit in handcuffs. "You okay, Sarah?" Miller asked, his voice low and kind. "I'm okay, Sheriff," I said. "The flight data is all on the camera." He tried to use a magnet to crash the instruments. He thought I wouldn't notice. Leo started shouting then. His voice was high and thin, like a wire about to snap. "She's crazy. She did this. She lured me up there and started acting insane. She's trying to frame me because I wanted to put her in a home. Look at her. She's 75 years old. She doesn't know what she's doing." I watched them put him in the back of the patrol car. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like I had won a prize. I just felt a deep, cold hollow where my heart used to be. I had carried that boy in my arms. I had taught him how to ride a bike. And today, I had to be the one to hand him over to the law to save my own life. The next few weeks were a different kind of storm. Just because Leo was in jail didn't mean the fight was over. He had a lawyer, a man who was just as sharp and mean as the wealth manager, Mr. Henderson. They tried to play the dementia card in court. They argued that the video I recorded was confusing, and that I had manipulated the situation because I was suffering from elderly paranoia. I had to sit in a small, windowless room and answer questions for hours. They asked me what day it was. They asked me who the president was. They asked me to subtract 7 from 100 over and over again. Every time I answered correctly, the lawyer would scowl. "Mrs. Miller," the lawyer said, leaning over the table, "isn't it true that you've been found wandering your garden at night? Isn't it true that you've left the stove on multiple times, nearly burning the house down?" "It is true that those things happened," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "It is also true that my son, Leo, staged every single one of them. I have the video from my kitchen that shows him turning the stove on after I went to bed. Would you like to see it again?" The lawyer went quiet. He knew about the video, but he hoped I would be too scared to talk about it clearly. He didn't realize that a pilot is trained to handle interrogations from air traffic control during an emergency. You give the facts. You don't get emotional. You stay on the path. The real turning point came when the police searched Leo's room in my house. They found more than just the magnet. They found a notebook where Leo had been keeping a log of my fake mistakes. He had been planning this for months, even before he moved in. He had lists of nursing homes and their costs. He had brochures for real estate auctions. But the worst thing they found was the medicine. In a small box hidden inside an old pair of boots, the police found a bottle of pills. They weren't vitamins. They were powerful sedatives, the kind that make you feel dizzy, confused, and slow. They found traces of the powder in my coffee canister and in the red wine I had poured out into the plant. When Sheriff Miller showed me the lab report, I had to sit down. I thought I knew how bad it was, but seeing it on paper was different. My son hadn't just been lying to me. He had been slowly poisoning me. He was willing to dull my mind and break my body just to get his hands on the house Jim and I had built together. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," the sheriff said. "I know this is hard." "It's not hard, Sheriff," I whispered. "It's a crash. And in a crash, you just have to hope the black box tells the truth." Word got out about what had happened. In a small town, news travels faster than a tailwind. I expected people to look at me with pity. I expected them to whisper about poor Sarah and her bad son. But that's not what happened. A few days after the court hearing, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, there were 5 men standing on my porch. They were all older, with wrinkled skin and caps that said things like retired Navy or Delta Airlines. They were my crew. "Captain Miller," one of them said. It was Bill, a man I used to fly with 20 years ago. "We heard about the trouble. We're here to help you get the plane back in the air. And we're here to make sure no one else tries to mess with your flight plan." They didn't just talk. They took action. Bill and the others helped me change all the locks on the house. They installed a real security system, not the smart one Leo had used to spy on me, but a solid one that only I had the code for. They helped me clean out Leo's room and pack his things into boxes for the police to take. But most importantly, they went to the court. When it was time for the final hearing about my competency, the back of the courtroom was filled with pilots in their old uniforms. They stood there like a wall of blue and gold. When the judge asked if there was anyone who could speak for my character, Bill stood up. "Your Honor," Bill said. "I've flown 3,000 miles over the ocean with Sarah Miller in the seat next to me. I've seen her land a plane with a fire in the cargo hold. She has better judgment in her pinky finger than most men half her age have in their whole bodies. If she says her son was poisoning her, then he was poisoning her. We stand by our captain." The judge looked at the sea of pilots. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at Leo, who was sitting at the defense table, looking small and broken. "The petition for guardianship is denied," the judge said, slamming his gavel down. "And the charges of elder abuse and attempted fraud against Leo Miller will move forward to trial." The trial lasted a week. I had to testify, which was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had to look at my son and tell the world exactly what he had done to me. I had to talk about the ghosts in the hallway and the spinning instruments. Leo's lawyer tried one last time to break me. "Mrs. Miller, don't you think you're being a little harsh? Your son was in debt. He was desperate. He just wanted to make sure you were taken care of." "There are many ways to take care of a mother," I said. "Poisoning her and trying to crash her plane are not on that list." My son didn't see a person when he looked at me. He saw an ATM with a heartbeat. "I'm not being harsh. I'm being a pilot. I'm reporting a dangerous condition so it doesn't happen to anyone else." Leo was found guilty. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. As they led him away, he finally looked at me. For a second, I saw the little boy I used to know. The one who liked to watch the planes take off. But then his face hardened, and he looked away. I realized then that I couldn't save him. You can't fix a plane that doesn't want to fly. It has been a year since the trial. The house is quiet again, but it's a peaceful quiet. I don't look over my shoulder when I'm in the kitchen. I don't wonder if my keys are going to disappear. I still have my little Cessna. Every Saturday morning, I go up. Sometimes I go alone, just to feel the wind and the sun. But more often now, I take someone with me. I've started a program at the local airfield. We call it the Silver Wings. It's for older people who have always wanted to fly but were too afraid, or for retired pilots who just want to stay sharp. We talk about planes, but we also talk about life. We talk about how to stay independent and how to watch out for the lamos of the world. I've become a mentor to a young girl named Maya. She's 18 and wants to be a commercial pilot, just like I was. She reminds me of myself at that age, full of fire and ready to take on the sky. "Captain Sarah," she asked me one day as we were cruising at 3,000 feet. "Were you ever scared? When everything was going wrong with your son, were you scared you really were losing your mind?" I looked out at the horizon. The world looked so small and neat from up here. "I was terrified, Maya," I said. "But fear is just like turbulence. It's bumpy, and it makes your stomach drop, but it doesn't mean the plane is going down. You just have to keep your hands on the wheel and trust your training. You have to remember who you are." Maya nodded, her eyes on the clouds. "I want to be as strong as you one day." "You already are," I told her. "You just have to learn how to trim the tabs." I sit on my porch in the evenings now, watching the sun go down. The garden is doing well. The plant I poured the wine into died, but I replaced it with a beautiful rose bush. It has thorns, but the flowers are worth it. I haven't heard from Leo. He hasn't written, and I haven't visited. Maybe one day I will be ready to talk to him, but for now, the frequency is silent. And that's okay. I have my friends. I have my students. And I have my sky. I've learned that life isn't about avoiding the storms. It's about knowing how to fly through them. It's about keeping your eyes on the instruments of truth and not letting anyone else touch your controls. I am Sarah Miller. I am 76 years old. I am a mother who survived, a pilot who stayed on course, and a woman who knows exactly where she is going. The altimeter is steady. The fuel is full. The sky is clear. I pick up my logbook and write the final entry for the day. Flight completed. No issues reported. The captain is home. I close the book and look up at the first star of the evening. It looks a lot like a distant landing light, guiding me the rest of the way. I smile, stand up, and walk inside. I lock the door, because it's a good habit, not because I'm afraid. I am the master of my own flight deck. And the view from here is absolutely beautiful.